But there are some very important changes, not least the grade of oil that's required. Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video. And firstly, I'd like to apologise for not having posted any new videos recently. I've simply been too busy with other things, but hopefully that's about to change and there should be some really good content coming up over the next few weeks. Also, I'd like to say a big thanks to everybody for their support. The channel's doing really well, and the last video I posted, the one about the problems I've been having with my Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport, is doing really well. It should be on 100,000 views very shortly. It does sadden me that such a negative video has done so well, but hopefully I'll be able to follow it up with some news from Volkswagen UK about how they are dealing with these problems, and I'll make a video sharing that information with you as soon as I possibly can do. Because I've been so busy, I've been a bit lax with the first oil change on the Mk8. Now, as you probably know, I like to do an early oil change well before the 10,000 mile service, and we're going to do that today. The reason I'm going to do it now at about 6,200 miles is because about a month ago the car went on track at Bedford Autodrome and it was a really hot day. The oil would have got very, very hot indeed. So I think it's a good time now to get it out and put some lovely fresh oil inside the car. The process is very simple, but there are some very important changes, not least the grade of oil that's required. So without any further ado, let's get changing the oil on my Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport. Okay, first thing you need to do is make sure you're using the correct oil, because it's very easy to fall foul of this, and if you do, you will invalidate your warranty. Now, the handbook just says contact your local Volkswagen dealer to find out what oil should be used, and I did do that, and they told me I needed to use a 0W30 fully synthetic oil that conforms to VW 50400 standards. I was a bit dubious about this because it's basically the same engine as in the Mark 7.5s, and they take a 5W30 50400 approved oil. So I double checked with Irwin. It's a free Volkswagen website, just Google it, Irwin. You can register for it for free. I've done that as well, and I've mainly used it over the last couple of years to check out digital service histories on cars. I'd like to thank a guy called Sean from the RS3 Owner Club for telling me about this, because it's made my life a lot easier. Before I go and see a car, I just log into Irwin, put in the chassis number, it tells me when and where it's been serviced by Volkswagen. What I didn't realise was that it can also tell you what's due on your car when, which is something that's so hard to get out of Volkswagen dealers. Lots of people have taken their cars for a service at VW, not been told about things that are due, such as Haldex oil changes or DSG oil changes. Now you can find out for yourself. So this is the screen. Once I put the chassis number and said I want to do an oil change, it tells me you can do these other things as well if you want to at this mileage, but you don't have to, so you can uncheck them. But it does tell you what's due when. So brake fluid is at 2 years old, pollen filter is at 2 years old or 40,000 miles, whichever comes soonest presumably. Air filter is at 6 years old or 60,000 miles. Spark plugs are at 4 years old or 40,000 miles, and DSG oil, there's no time on it, just 80,000 miles, which was a surprise to me because for most of the time since they came out it was 40,000 miles. That's really good. But the best bit is that you can create a maintenance table. This is a checklist technicians get at Volkswagen dealerships when they get your car. They put the mileage in, the chassis number in, and it tells them what's due when, and there's not a lot to do on this because it's just an oil change, but it tells you what oil, and it's again confirmed what Volkswagen told me, 50400 0W30. So I can be pretty confident that that is correct. It also says 5.7 litres is needed, which is I think the same as the old EA888s. The next problem was trying to get some. I contacted Volkswagen's trade parts specialist, TPS, which I'm sure you guys know about. They supply businesses like me, but you can also buy their things from the Volkswagen retailers like oil. They, believe it or not, didn't have any of this oil in any size in stock, and there was none in the country. So I tried a few other websites. The big problem is that for some reason, even though it's been out best part of the year, none of the oil checkers from Opel, Shell, even Volkswagen's own one at TPS and Castrol's, none of them recognise the car as existing. So the only thing I could do was search for that particular grade of oil, and the only company that listed it was Shell. And amazingly, they had a link on their website that said buy online. It took me to the Euro Car Parts website. And even more amazingly, even though it's quite an obscure oil, the local branch that's a couple of miles away had it in stock, and they delivered it here within about a quarter of an hour, which is incredible. I've got them over here. It's not cheap oil. I would normally pay about half this for this quantity of oil from Volkswagen, but I didn't actually ask them how much it was because I didn't have it in stock. But whatever, I can do the job today, which is really important because the car's going to go on a dyno tomorrow, and I just wanted to put some fresh oil into it. So here it is, our super deluxe Shell oil. What a funny colour box that is. 0W30, 504 and 50700 approved. So about £60 worth of oil is what we're going to use today, 6 litres or thereabouts. Next, you need to get a filter. The good news is, even though this is a new EA888, it uses the old filter, so 06F115 562B. That is about £12. And then the bit probably a lot of people don't do is to change the sump plug. The good news is that actually, for the first time in a long time, you don't need to change the plug. Another change is that we've actually got an aluminium, or is it steel? Actually, I think that's a steel sump there, which I haven't seen for a long time on EA888s. It was plastic. Now with the old plastic sump, you had to change the plastic plug because it had a little O-ring, and you really do not want to be trusting a rubber O-ring and oil indefinitely to keep the oil in your car. So now we get a plug, but unlike the old sump plugs, one of which we have here, the washer, you can't really replace the washer on these ones that have been in use since Mark IV, I think. On these, you just buy a washer. The only problem is from Volkswagen, the washer is about 3 times the price of this Febby Bilstein sump plug on the aftermarket. So yeah, try and buy these somewhere else if I were you. So that's a total cost of about £76 in total to do this oil change yourself. So really, you want to be paying a garage £200, or you're probably not going to be getting the right oil. So yeah, let's just see what this sump is made of. If I can find a magnet of sorts, there we go. That's some magnets. I think because it's black painted, it's got to be, yeah, it's steel. But the good news is, we've got the aluminium subframe, so they take it away in one hand and give it to you in the other. That's the aluminium subframe that they used on the Clubsport S and the 2020 model year TCR. It's not that exciting though, because it was used on every Audi A3 of the 8V generation, so it's not that exotic, but it's nice to have it because it's a little bit lighter, a little bit stiffer. Right, let's get the dirty oil out of the Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport. Okay, so the car's just getting up to operating temperature. It's very important you drain it when it's warm because you get a much more thorough drain then. The beauty of the Mk8, I can't remember this on the older cars, is that there is an oil temperature reading just there on the left of the dash. So we've got gearbox oil at 80 degrees, oil for the engine at 87 degrees and coolant at 90. You can find that the coolant temperature gets to 90 really quickly and the oil can be somewhere like 50 or 60. So it's best to just leave it a little bit longer after it's gone to 90 so you get it nice and hot. So I think that's just perfectly fine. So let's turn that off. Obviously, if you're going to jack the car up at home, make sure you do it safely. But this is a really easy car to do an oil change on. You don't need to remove the under tray, and the oil filter is just here. Now, before you start working on that, you need to take off the oil filler cap, which is actually in a little bit less of an annoying position than it was on the older cars. And you can actually get a funnel in there. On the old cars, you couldn't. So let's put that over there. You remove the filler cap and the dipstick because it allows gravity to give you a better drain as well. Otherwise, there's a sort of degree of, I don't know what the word is, a vacuum or something being formed. So the first thing I do is undo, I mean, that's so loose. It's 25 Newton meters officially. So it's not tight at all. Hopefully, just like the older cars, this will start to glug, which means that the filter housing is draining, so you don't get oil everywhere, because obviously this is the filter housing and there's a lot of oil in it. You can hear it running out now. So we shall leave that to drain and then get underneath the car. That's a drag having to do this with 2 hands and a camera. Okay, let's get the car up in the oven. It's a good time to have a look at your tyres, just make sure there aren't any punctures, because that can happen at any mileage. A number of times I've found studs and nails in tyres, but they do tend to give you a bit of a clue by going down ever so slowly, and that's where tyre pressure monitoring really does help. But also check your sidewalls for damage, and if you've got the handbrake on, that's really hard. Interestingly, I don't know where I've seen this before, but we've got these spoilers, I guess, on, yeah, actually we've seen it on Mk8s when they've been on the ground. So these are the spoilers designed to make the rear wishbones a bit more aerodynamic, so that's really cool. Other than that, it looks pretty similar to the 7s. We've just got passive dampers here. You can see the wax that I put on back in the spring is still there, so that should do a good job over the winter. I might just give it another coat before the gritters come out. Won't be long now, guys. And again, front wishbones have got spoiler on them as well, just to make it more aerodynamic and save fuel. That's really cool. Okay, so just like a Mark II Golf then, we've got a steel sump, but unlike a Mark II Golf, we need to use a Torx bit. So these are T40, you can buy them off eBay for not a lot of money. Put them on your ratchets, like so. So just a normal 3/8 of an inch ratchet. It should be in the right position, having just taken the oil filter off. And then drain the oil carefully, make sure you dispose of it in an environmentally friendly way. And be careful not to burn yourself, he says. Okay, so T40, let's just show you what's going on. Hopefully you can see all right. So let's crack that. Just taking the socket off now so I can wind this out by hand. This is going to be very, very thin and very, very hot. Okay. Yeah, not bad. Not too much splashing, but could be worse. That is like water, look at that. I was just wondering if I'd undone the coolant instead of the oil. That is crazy. Okay, while that's draining, you need to now deal with the filter housing, which should be empty now. There's a little bit of oil left in there like there used to be on the old cars, which doesn't drain, which is a bit of a drag. If you're a real OCD geek, you can get that out with, I don't know, some sort of siphon, or just mop it up with some paper. Right, we'll just put this in there and let that drain as well, and then get the new filter ready for action. So the paper filter element, which is supposedly good for the environment, and it's got a rubber O-ring which needs to be lubricated with a bit of fresh oil. So that's ready to go. Let's get the filter back. Okay, so there's the housing that's just been draining. It's got a very visibly grey O-ring on there, which we need to take off. Like that, and then put this new one on there. Just be careful not to stretch it, so don't put it too far down too soon. And just work it down to the bottom notch. Sometimes a bit confusing as to where it should sit, but it's actually left a grey mark from the old rubber on there. Just make sure it's sitting correctly as well. Okay, so that's good. And then the new filter, it doesn't really matter which way it goes in, but I always like to have the writing at the top, so I always put that in like that because it sits that way around. Okay, so that's the filter ready to go back on the car. It does say on here that it should be tightened to 25 Newton meters of torque. If you haven't got a torque wrench, don't over tighten it. As you saw when I took it off, it's not that tight. Okay, let's go and put this on. Now I've got to go up a step ladder to do this because the car's still draining its oil. Something you don't have to do if you do it at home on some axle stands. Okay, so that's the filter, just thread it on there by hand initially, or for most of the way actually. Okay, and then put your, what is it? It's a 32mm socket of some sort. It's a special oil one, that one, because it's not very deep. And then torque wrench on. And when you hear it click, that's it, all done. So must remember to put some plug in now, and must remember then to put oil in. That's the only way you can go wrong with this. So yeah, let's see how the draining is going. Yeah, okay, I might have been a bit optimistic about the minute. It's probably been about 5 minutes and it's still draining. So we'll leave that to drain a little bit longer. Okay, apart from the odd drip, it is now fully drained and we can put in the new sump plug and washer. Like I said, you don't need a new sump plug, just the washer. So I'm going to start it off by hand. Unfortunately, I don't have the torque wrench setting for tightening that up, but the good news is it's a steel sump, which is really hard to damage by over tightening. The old aluminium ones that ran from Mark IV until Mark VI were really easy to strip by over tightening, so this should be a bit safer for the ham-fisted mechanics out there. It's got an aluminium washer on though, which you will feel get crushed when you get to the right sort of level of torque. Which I'd say was around there, so that's done. So yeah, no messing around with under trays, always a bonus. So now let's get the car back down on the ground. Okay then, so yes, this is so much better than the old ones. It had a crappy little filler just here that was really shallow. On there I can see we can put this in quite nicely, he says, although it could still tip over with too much oil in it. A little tip if you've got the old 7.5s is to buy the little extension piece you find on Tiguan's. It's about that much higher than the, it just clips into the normal oil filler, and it means you can put a funnel in there without it falling out, which is really useful, because if you spill around the back of there it ends up on the turbo, and yes, you will notice that when it gets hot. Right, it's very easy for me to get this all wrong now, so let me just try and put the camera down there. Okay, hopefully that will be a good shot, and I've just spilt a bit already. Bloody hell, it's so thin, this oil. The good thing about that though is that it goes in very quickly, so that's 5 litres done. So the official fill quantity on these is 5.7. We've done probably a more thorough flush drain than most garages would do, so it could end up being about 6, but let's put 5.7 in for now. Okay, it's a bit easier to be accurate when the oil's in here, so we've got a litre in here. That I'd say is 5.7. Okay, now we need to see what the dipstick says, so let's get that and the cap. Okay, so let's put that in. It will show a bit high now until we start the engine. It's a bit filler cap on before we forget. That's the way to do it. Okay, so it is pretty high now. It's probably just over the maximum mark, but that's fine because it will settle once we start the engine. So yeah, that's a fair bit too high, but let's see what happens once we start her up. Okay, sounds good. You know that horrible rattling you sometimes get when you've got the new oil in. We'll just leave that to run for a few minutes. You should really only check the oil when it's up to temperature. It will be quite warm now because there's a lot of warmth in the engine even though the oil is new. So let's leave it for a bit and then come back and see where we're at. Okay, before we do the final checking of the oil level, I just want to answer a question a lot of you guys have been asking, and that is whether you can fit the earlier, prettier engine cover from the Mk7 7.5 in this case. It's actually a Leon Cooper, but it's all the same design, to replace the really boring sort of spongy one that's fitted to the Mk8. I had to take it off to get to the oil filter, so now's a good time to find out. So if we look at the back, there's these 4 rubber mounting bungs, I guess, and on here there's still 4 holes, but I don't think they're in the right position, but let's find out. So they're the studs there, one there. They look about the same, but at the front, this one down here is a lot further forward. So let's line the back ones up, which is there, and no, we're well short of that one and that one. So I'm afraid, guys, the answer is a no. Okay, so that is actually pretty much perfect. It's just under the kink at the top and just up to the gauze. So actually 5.7 on this car is bang on. Okay, well, before you give yourself a well-deserved pat on the back, just make sure there are no leaks from the sump plug and the oil filter housing, and make sure you put the dipstick and the oil filler cap back on. It's very easy to forget those, but overall this is such an easy job to do that's very within the capabilities of any DIY owner, and it's a very satisfying job to do. I probably wouldn't pay the £200 it's going to cost to get this done at a main dealership in between the normal servicing, but for the 70 something pounds it costs to do it, I'm quite happy with that kind of expense, just to have the peace of mind of knowing we've got some really nice oil in there until the service is due, which at this rate won't be very far away. It's going to be sometime in the mid-autumn. Something to look forward to. There'll be a software update then as well, no doubt, because the car's actually got a software update outstanding on it right now. So if you've got one of these, there is an update for the eSIM and the online services. You probably get the double click through the speakers where it drops out the eSIM. Hopefully that'll be resolved by the software update. So if you're going into a dealer for any work, make sure they do that software update. Next video should be a dyno session with this car to find out exactly what its 100% unmodified engine is producing, and that's going to take place at Racing Line Performance down in Milton Keynes. You probably heard about that company because a lot of you guys run a lot of their parts. They're also going to roll out their Mk8 Golf R, so we can see exactly what those two cars do on the dyno. So that should be a really good video. Look out for that dropping within about a week or so. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching this Volks Wizard video. As ever, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Please do share it with like-minded enthusiasts. Please do comment. I do read them all. And as ever, please do subscribe. Like oil is the lifeblood of your engine, subscriptions are the lifeblood of this channel. And I'll see you for the next one very soon.